Hello, Blake Brennan here from Trinity Whip Company. And today what I've got for you is an example of customization. This is just a fun video for you guys that are new to whip making or have whip made for a while. Maybe you have run into similar things. But some customers have, when you get a call from a customer, they'll be like, I just want this whip. I want an Indiana Jones whip, or I want this, or I want a Target whip. And they'll give you some specifics. Of course, like, handle braid, I'm not talking about that. Or knot length, handle length, I mean, that's all part of it. That's kind of common what most people will do on a base level when they're trying to get certain whips. Like, I know I want a 10-inch handle, and I know I want a Target whip. Well, one of my customers, he actually goes into a lot of depths every time I've got him. And he's gone on to Steve Townsend and my friend Franco before. And after that, when I knew that he was going to contact them, I waited for them to hear from him. And then I didn't want to spoil the news, but I said, this type of guy right here, he trains the whip maker. But here's an example of some customization that you may or may not run across. But if you do run across this as a young whip maker, you may want to realize, like, you may or may not want to take that order. But if you haven't thought about it, that's why it's kind of here, just so you guys can think about it. You may think, do I want to take on this? Do I not want to take on it? Or sure, you may try it, it may blow up in your face. You may not. You may realize you'll do a good job, but be like, I never want to do that headache again. But anyways, he called me up and he's like, hey, I got another whip for you with specifications. And he's like, unless I may be off on the specs, but I think it's a 6-foot whip, might be 6.5. But he's like, I want a 6-foot Bullwhip, and I want a 16-inch handle. And even though it's spring steel for a Target whip, even if it's a thinner piece of spring steel, or like 7 millimeters wide, you can get some at 6. I want to do it that long, but it's still a lot of weight once it's 16. It's a long handle, and so he wants, like, I want a 16-inch handle, and he says I want the base to be 24 millimeters, and then I want the handle to taper to about 22 millimeters towards the transition. And this is all based off of Joe's strain, Zora, one of the Zora whips. He has several Joe strains, some from Props, some made by Joe. He's got a nice one. He's got a couple that were bench the handles off, but if they're the ones from Stage Props, they're made a little thick because they had thick ferrules, and the ferrules were so thick you couldn't really make a sleek Target Bullwhip, and the ferrule would look like clown shoes. So, but he's like, I want it to be, I've never had this long of a handle. I want a 16-inch handle, and where they would normally be knots in a ferrule, I want to look like it, but I don't want the knots like a normal ferrule knot. I'm gonna put a knot here, a knot here, and a knot here, and I want them so far apart, etc. But he's like, I want it to start at 24 millimeters and 22, and I'm like, that is a very thick starting point for a Target Bullwhip. Usually that's the fattest you would ever want a Bullwhip to be a transition, and then go down to 22. It's like, well, 16 inches with all that is a very heavy whip. And being customer service I am, and I'm very candid with Jace, and even this is me being very candid. I'm just like, Jace, oh, hey buddy, I think it's going to be too bulky, and you probably won't like it. To me, it's just like, it's a lot of weight, hit these specs, long handle. And so I made it for him, and he would send me pictures of specs, attachments to specs, and I'm going on, but you're about to see it. And then so I made the whip for him. Now the whip came out just like his specs were, and I waited for him to get it, but I have 100% satisfaction guarantee. So once I was waiting for it. As soon as he got it, and I knew it arrived, he pulled it out. I knew it happened that day, but he sent me a text. He's like, hey Blake, ... And I already knew. He's like, hey, I don't even want to say it, but can you remake it out? Now, sometimes you buy a whip from a whip maker. The biggest problem I see is they'll buy someone's whip, and now that's all they've had by a kangaroo maker. So they think everyone's kangaroo whip is like that whip. So you'll get a guy that's never bought from you, and he'll say, hey, I want you to make a 5-foot whip, but unlike how you normally make it, which they don't know, not that this is Jace, but unlike how you normally know, I want it to be heavier than normal. Well, what are we comparing it to? So that's the biggest problem. I think a lot of people that rarely ever you're getting new whips, or you just get one, you just imagine whoever, it's a high quality whip, every high quality whip maker. But that's like saying every car is the same. A Ferrari is the same as a Bug, the Beetle. So with that, it's almost best to, if you're trying to whip maker out, let them know what you want and just say, make it your way. Most of us have 100% satisfaction guarantee. So it's always best to have the whip maker do it their way, and then they get it. Then you can be like, well, that's how you do it. I want that slimmer. I want that thicker. I think that can work a lot best than if it was a one-off customer. Now, this was not a one-off customer. This is not the first time I've done these specs. But, he ended up sending it back, and then I redid it my way and shrank everything down, and he loves the whip. It worked out really great. But this is an example. We're going to go ahead and look down here. Now, these are a couple different sets of prints, but this is just some of the stuff. He did a lot more than this, but I had him send this out to me. But here, you can come over here and see this one. This is the original specs, like I said. Here's an example of different measurements he wanted me to hit and what it meets a different way, from where the handle is, where the actual handle is compared to where the knots are, the knot on the thong. He wanted certain diameters and thickness, like it's 24, it's 21 here, 21, 22 here. He wanted it down by 21 here. At the end of the handle's right there at the 16. By then he wants it 20. I mean, there's a lot of crazy specs you got to throw into him. Yeah, you want the seal knot to match the same size width. You know, this is some really nice work. Like if you're a whip maker and a guy wanted custom work, first of all, I will say this is the greatest or coolest thing he could give you. He just sent me pictures and I took the specs, but this is awesome. Like it really is like he measured it out, or he did all the measuring. It's like you could theoretically put this whip on it, you know, for the most part. You know, the knots were a little bit off from it. He's not having exact measurements, but you can almost put it on it, and it's really close. Now, I don't know if these are original specs we went with. Certain things happen, you know, but either way, like that's really nice. But here's then after you realize that's too fat. I don't know if these are two different measurements and two different Joe Strain whips, but I think this is the original Joe he had, and then he was thinking I wanted it to be similar but with thicker handles. So this might be the official specs, but eventually we shrunk them all down. Like I want to have this. I never want this on my target would be 22. 22 is about as thick as I want it. I'd rather have anywhere between 20 and 22. It can go thinner than 20. You know, but I like this to be less than that. Like a good 20 millimeters is good, and I would like that to run the whole way out. And if you want to taper, which he wants, well, that's why he wants kind of like 22, because he wants it to be 20. He likes the tapered handles. So we're not just talking about making sure this whole handle is one thickness. He wants to make sure it's thicker here, and it slowly tapers 2 millimeters over like 14 inches at the 6-inch handle. This is a lot of crazy specs, you know. Now, this is just an example of some customization. Like I said, here's a little bit of picture of the whip, but he had this for, you know, like it got some use out of it before I sent him a replacement. And, you know, it's actually about a year or two old, but I just got this or a year old. I just got this in the mail back from him recently. He's a good friend of mine. And he didn't return it yet. He said he would, and I didn't bother saying a word. But then he's like, it's 9 months later, and he's like, holy crap, I was cleaning out my garage, and I totally found that big whip. So he just sent it back. He sent me all these specs. I kind of want to put these up in a shadow box somewhere just to show an example. But that's it. That's all the post. A lot of talk, not a lot of whip, but I whip to show off. I just want to show you as a, you know, this is an example of customization. And I would say it's an example of a very, with the spectrum of how much you can customize. This is from a customer saying, I want specific specs. I mean, you can put all sorts of things on a whip. That's customization. Anything you do is kind of a custom project. I'm just saying this is a very high end of the spectrum of demands from a customer. Demand's not the best word, but requests. And so you'll get a moment where you'll get customers like this, and you may decide to pick it or not. Somebody will be like, do you do 24 plat? You're like, I never done 24 plat. Man, you got to decide there, do you want to try it or not? Same thing with this. He's like, I want this. You're like, well, I made a target bullwhip, but I've never hit all these specs or hit the thong specs as well. And then there are even some other thong. Sometimes I get specs more than this. I'll get specs from people that also want the whole thong to hit certain millimeters or certain models. They just got a whip they love from someone that no longer makes them, and they're just like, can you custom recreate this? And you know, it takes more time than normal, and it can be fun, but once again, you got to eventually make those decisions. You know, you know, is it worth the hassle? You know, it can be, and even if you do it, it's hassle. You can always say like, well, that's awesome. I'm so glad it worked out. That's why I'm never doing that again. But you never know. So just like to share this with customers to see something. Also, especially like I said, really for you whip makers that are new and maybe never came into this or thought about this, you're whip making leather or even nylon, similar things apply. Sometimes you'll get this stuff. But thanks for watching the video. God bless. Have a good day.